It looks like Zelensky and Putin will be meeting in Turkey on Thursday to talk about the end of this war. At least that's what everyone is hoping for, because Zelensky is calling out Putin and kind of calling out his bluff. For those who don't know, last night around 1:30 a.m. Ukrainian time, Putin made a historic speech. I say that because Putin doesn't typically give speeches after midnight. It was around 11:30 p.m. when the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry came out and said, "Stay tuned, everyone. Putin at midnight is going to make a major announcement that's going to be summing up the past 4 days, the victory parade, and more. And because of the late hour, you won't be able to answer any questions at all." Well, he was an hour and a half late. He came out. He spoke briefly for about 95% of it, blaming Ukraine, of course, for everything, violating ceasefires, why they can't have peace, prolonging the war, and all this stuff, to eventually get to him not agreeing to the ceasefire in which the United States, Europe, and Ukraine put forward, but introduced a third option, which wasn't on the table, which was, how about we have a meeting, a direct meeting with no preconditions on Thursday inside of Turkey. I will tell you, I don't think Putin was ready for the response that he got, which was pretty much every world leader saying, but you're doing a ceasefire on Monday. You can have a talk on Thursday, sure, why not? Have a discussion all you want. But we said, and our threat was, you're going to do a ceasefire starting Monday. And the first person that we heard from was, of course, Zelensky, which makes sense. He should be the first one who responds to what Putin did. He said in Telegram and on Twitter, "It is a positive sign that the Russians have finally began to consider ending the war. The entire world has been waiting for this for a very long time. And the very first step in truly ending any war is a ceasefire. There's no point in continuing the killing, even for a single day. We expect Russia to confirm a ceasefire, full, lasting, and reliable, starting tomorrow, May 12th, and Ukraine is ready to meet." He also said in other statements that essentially Ukraine would mirror the way that Russia does things on the battlefield. If Russia fires, Ukraine fires. If Russia stops, Ukraine stops. We were hearing, after Zelensky, world leaders finally come forward. Now, these world leaders didn't hide their frustration in Russia, essentially saying that you're just prolonging the ending of this war, because we gave you one A or B, and you created one that's not one we agreed with. So obviously we're going with A, ceasefire, or B, no ceasefire, and we're going to sanction you, Russia, and give Ukraine more weapons. And so the Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, wrote online, "In response to our appeal, the Russians have proposed peace talks starting May 15th. The world, however, is waiting for a unilateral decision on immediate and unconditional ceasefire. Ukraine is ready, no more victims." The first U.S. representative to come out was the U.S. Special Envoy to peace talks with the United States and Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg. He pretty much said the same thing. As President Trump has repeatedly said, stop the killing. An unconditional 30-day ceasefire first and during it, and move into comprehensive peace discussions, not the other way around. Then we heard from the new German Chancellor, Merz, who said yesterday in Kiev, "We and our partners called for a 30-day ceasefire to create space for negotiations. Ukraine agreed to this with no ifs and buts. We expect Moscow to now agree to a ceasefire. This is essential before beginning a genuine dialogue. Talks cannot begin until weapons fall silent." We heard pretty much the same thing with Macron. And then, eventually, Donald Trump, who after 12:15 this morning said, "President Putin of Russia does not want to have a ceasefire agreement with Ukraine, but rather wants to meet on Thursday in Turkey to negotiate a possible end to the bloodbath. Ukraine should agree to this immediately. At least they'll be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. And if it's not, European leaders and the US will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly." He does say more, but I just want to stop there for a second and show that what Donald Trump is saying here is this: Ukraine, just go meet with him, because you and I both know he's not going to agree to anything, or he's going to give you a list of demands the same list that we've been seeing, and it's going to be, well, that doesn't make any sense, so obviously there's not going to be a peace here. And then once that happens, we can finally give you everything. He says, I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who's too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could have not been won, not even close, without the United States of America. Have the meeting now. Essentially, poking fun back at Putin, saying, you are celebrating the peace of a world war, yet you're starting a world war here. And we know that Ukraine won't be able to make any kind of deal with you because the things you're asking for are just really ridiculous. And that is something that Trump has said, J.D. Vance has said, other U.S. representatives, Lindsey Graham, other people, even around the world leaders are all saying the same thing. Russia, your demands are way too high, man. You invaded Ukraine, you gotta be punished for doing that, A. And B, you can't have a wish list and just get everything on said wish list. Actually, they shouldn't be getting anything. In which we do know that Steve Witkoff is supposedly, I guess tomorrow, handing Russia a 22-point outline for peace negotiations and or a ceasefire, something around that line. And the only thing in there that we know about that may not be favorable, or actually I'll say this, it's favorable only to Russia, which is they're saying that Ukraine can't join NATO, which leads us to where we're at now, in which, okay, ceasefire is supposed to be starting, and at least I'll tell you the time now, it's 9:43 p.m. right now in Ukraine. So we are less than 3 hours away to see whether or not Russia will agree to this ceasefire or not. More than likely they're not, since even during their own ceasefires, they violated it, even though I know Putin says that Ukraine violated it, the Easter one 5,000 times, this past one constantly, even though it was Russia who was violating it every single time. Let's make that clear. I know I get viewers from around the world here. It is Russia that violated it every time. If you hear otherwise, then you're getting your meter straight from Russian propaganda. I'm telling you that now. But now, as Zelensky, as he usually does, he does a nightly speech in which we get the final words on the day on what's happening here. Zelensky says in his nightly speech, we await a full and lasting ceasefire starting from tomorrow to provide the necessary basis for diplomacy. There is no point in prolonging the killings. I'll be waiting for Putin in Turkey on Thursday personally. I hope that this time the Russians will not look for excuses. So what Zelensky is saying is this. I'm calling your bluff. You want direct conversations with no preconditions whatsoever? Cool. Now, I'm going there, and I want you there, Vladdy Daddy. That's where we're at. The Kremlin not responding to this. The only thing we had got was the Kremlin spokeswoman. She earlier went on her own Telegram channel and tried to claim that the world leaders were doing cocaine in their train ride to Ukraine. I can't make that up. She said that. I translated it for everyone. She claims that Keir Starmer, the French President Macron, and the German Chancellor were on the train, not ready for journalists when they came in, and had to remove what looks to be a baggie of drugs and a cocaine spoon. Once again, I can't make this up. She put this on her own Telegram channel for all the Russian media to see. And when she put things out there, it's not like she put them out on her own personal page. This is on the Kremlin, her own Kremlin page. You know, you can see how the Russians are trying to spin this dialogue and everything that's going on to try to maybe put things in their favor, but it's not. You're not going to take over the news cycle with a stupid story like that when realistically it was like having a tissue and just go, oh, there's a tissue in the shot. Oh, let me just remove the tissue because it doesn't look good for the cameras. But that's where we stand. Zelensky's calling out Putin saying, I'll be there Thursday. You better be there. And we'll see what happens. I don't think that Russia's going to go for the ceasefire. We'll find out once again. We got less than 3 hours. I'll be sure to keep you updated. So if you haven't done so yet, please do make sure you subscribe, you turn on notifications, and you give this video a thumbs up. Thank you to everyone. We actually just gained about 600 new subscribers in the past 12 hours. So thank you to everyone coming in. I really greatly appreciate it. And I hope you're staying safe and sound.